SVC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
Yesterday, Allwyn International secured its ambitions to join the top table of gambling PLCs by undertaking an outright merger with Greek subsidiary OPAP. The deal transforms Allwyn once again. The enlarged group will now anchor its public listing in Athens, with OPAP valued at around 16 billion euros. But the real intrigue lies in what comes next. Will Allwyn pursue a co-listing in the US to fast-track growth around this 1.6 billion acquisition of PrizePicks, or opt for London to cement its status as Europe's largest lottery group and operator of the UK National Lottery? Welcome to iGaming Daily, supported by Optimove, the creator of positionless marketing and #1 player engagement platform. I'm Fernando, Noodt, media manager for SBC and your host for today, and to discuss yet another major move by Allwyn in the gaming market is Ted Menmuir, editor-at-large for SBC. Ted, how are you today?
Kramayoba, Fernando. It's good to talk to you from Georgia, where I'm at the SBC Summit in Tbilisi. So we'll be reporting from there this week.
Yeah, you can expect a lot coming from Georgia, as Ted and other journalists. Charlie Horner will be there as well, my colleague as co-host for the iGaming Daily. So you can expect to know what's going on in Georgia soon this week. But to cover also the Allwyn news is editor for SBC News, Ted Orme-Claye. Ted, we'll call you Ted OC for today's episode. Ted OC, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, Fernando. Good to be in the studio again. Good to be joining you from Manchester. And looking forward to seeing what Ted and Charlie are going to come out with from Tbilisi. Should be an interesting week.
Yeah, absolutely. But it has already been an interesting week so far with this Allwyn news. So, Ted OC, can you take us through the announcement of Allwyn's merger with OPAP?
Yeah, so like you said in the introduction, Fernando, Allwyn has obviously merged with OPAP, which is one of the biggest companies in Greece. It's been the license holder for the National Lottery there for some time. It's about to go into a tender process for that, I think, competing against Brightstar. But obviously, as the incumbent, will have a pretty solid standing in that. It also is a big provider of sports betting and gaming in the country. Allwyn has been a shareholder in OPAP for some time anyway. I think via the group, the investment group that owns Allwyn, KKCG, who I think were initially the one who took out that investment in OPAP, and now it's sort of further down the line has translated into Allwyn having some shareholding in OPAP. And now, obviously, they've now taken that a step further to create this big merged entity. Like you said in introduction, I think they are now the second largest publicly listed gambling firm in the world. And I think they are also the largest publicly listed lottery company in the world, because obviously Allwyn, their business model has been kind of developing into this one of being a lottery-led entertainment business, also with interest in sports and gaming, but with lottery primarily being the lead primary product. Valued at 16 billion. This new entity is pretty enormous, and they're setting themselves up for some big moves. I think it's going to be very interesting to watch over the coming years.
Yeah, well, you mentioned it's carrying a 16 billion valuation, 16 billion euros, that is. Why is this such a transformative merger for the global gaming market?
Okay, so look, for me, this is a real signal of intent by Allwyn, and who makes no secret that it's chasing the highest ranks of global gambling. Allwyn landing in the top valuation of PLCs continues this trend that we have witnessed of kind of new, kind of more digitally attuned corporations leading gambling PLC valuations. And even if we are quite reflective of this, like, it sounds regressive, but not too long ago, that kind of top 10 of gambling was actually primarily dominated by US land-based ventures, your Sands, your Winds, your Caesars. And we're now kind of, in the past 2 years, especially since Flutter have taken the top spot, we're seeing a change in kind of those dynamics play out. The other thing, as Ted mentioned here, is that by design, kind of Allwyn is very different to the others. And again, it's a company that has grown its units via kind of very kind of clever investments, taking kind of minority stakes and growing into majorities in Italy, in Austria. It's got a very kind of diverse portfolio, but it's also a company that has expanded its growth via lotteries and via kind of lottery contracts, and now is going to go deeper into online, into games development, into the development of new units. I think that entering kind of that top 10 of global gambling PLCs, it's going to carry a lot of position and attract a lot of interest from investors. Its options are very bright.
And in 2024 and 2025, Allwyn has been relentless in its ambitions, but this merger with OPAP feels unexpected, but also highly calculated. What options does OPAP give Allwyn that its other European subsidiaries don't?
I'll take the lead from this. I imagine Ted's got an opinion on this one as well. But
Ted's got an opinion on everything.
Yeah.
So you go ahead and take one because he'll not let you speak any.
We've been working with Ted for years. We know he can speak his mind on this one. I think really first part of that question, the answer to that question, Fernando, is obviously relating to this listing in Athens. I think, Allwyn, you mentioned how like last year we saw them expanding into lots of new verticals and really ramping up their operations. Ted mentioned this as well. Obviously, like we said, lottery-led, they've built up a lot of their portfolio and their revenue and available resources through lottery contracts, but now have been getting involved in a lot of other areas. They've had stakes in sports betting companies like OPAP, for example. They've been involved in casino. They obviously acquired Prize Picks lately. That was a huge one in America. So they're all about scale, and this Athens listing now will provide them kind of with a foothold in the public markets, which, as we said earlier, could then lead to an IPO on one of the world's bigger stock exchanges, obviously likely being either London or New York, which will in itself will be quite an interesting development because we've seen, obviously, companies in recent years leaving the London Stock Exchange to go to America instead. So Allwyn's decision there, I think, will be an interesting one further down the line. But yeah, I think that's one of the main significant things of this is it's providing them a foothold to scale up in the public markets. I mean, is that an opinion you share as well, Ted?
But for me, I think this is the most interesting part of the deal because I think that it's actually quite a clever move to go, okay, the Athens stock market, it might not going to grab that attention, but I think what it does give it is that it gives them a platform to actually study the scenarios of what's going on in the US and also in Europe. So in the US, with the plays out in online sportsbook regulation, but also the new competitors coming into that market with Kalshi, such as Kalshi and Polymarket, how they're going to affect that market. And in Europe, with kind of your tax tightening in Western markets. But also, as you mentioned, one of the plays that we've seen here is, and one of the interplays is definitely Allwyn's stewardship of the National Lottery, in which, okay, it's in year 2, but it has touched upon a lot of scrutiny in the UK, and I think that it could kind of leverage the UK listing as a political factor in its stewardship of the National Lottery, saying, hey, it does get a lot of criticism from the Daily Telegraph. We see the tax against Allwyn. I think that a pledge saying, look, we're now a UK PLC, give us some respect on that contract, that could come into play. I think it's a very astute move to go with Athens first. And look, it worked for Flutter. Why can't it work for anyone else?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think they are actually going after Flutter with this deal, so it's definitely something to be looking towards to and see what happens. We like to say hashtag wait and see for the LATAM episodes, but I'm going to bring this just for today to this specific episode. But why is this decision on Allwyn's future co-listing so important, whether it's in London or the US?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think from my perspective, if we're kind of looking at things from just a macroeconomic kind of standpoint, it just says a bit about the state of the different markets and the stock exchanges and which ones people see as having the most long-term prospects. I think the London Stock Exchange has been having a bit of difficulty, I think, over the past couple of years. Like I said, we've seen companies either delisting from it to go to the US, or in the case of like over in the fintech and payment side of things, Klarna obviously built itself up massively in BNPL in Europe, and then shunned the London Stock Exchange for an American IPO instead. So I think it kind of tells us a bit more about that as to which exchange companies, like rapidly growing companies like Allwyn, see as being a better long-term prospect for them. I guess the other side of it as well, though, is it would tell you a bit more about Allwyn's operations. I mean, for the most part, they are, I say for the most part, they are a Europe-dominated company, really. That is where the majority of their business is: UK, National Lottery, Greece, Czech Lottery, Austria, and so on. So from a geographic standpoint, obviously for them, a London listing would probably make a lot more sense because it's closer to home. And then on top of that, okay, sure, they have got involved in not the prediction market space, that's potential, but they've got involved in daily fantasy sports in the US via the acquisition of Prize Picks, which was itself a huge acquisition. And Prize Picks are now probing the idea of going into this emerging and rapidly growing prediction market space in the US. The thing with that, though, is that both daily fantasy sports and prediction markets are at a bit of a regulatory crossroads at the moment in America, I think, especially prediction markets. So, again, maybe they'll be looking at that and thinking, a bit like what Ted said, perhaps that we should bide our time, see what happens there, whilst in Europe, the lottery situation is always incredibly stable, and that forms a bulk of their business over here. Sports betting as well, they're involved a bit more in that in Greece. Again, goes through regulatory changes, but is a pretty stable industry. So I think it would tell us a bit about Allwyn's strategic outlook as well.
Look, I mean, I'm genuinely excited by Allwyn's strategy, and I think that the way it's kind of designed this merger and the options that it's gaining, especially from going Athens first, which, look, it might be kind of viewed as a conservative approach, but there are so many kind of headwinds coming into play, especially for 2025 onwards, and how kind of this decade is going to pan out. I think it could comfortably sit in Athens for a year or two. The other thing here is that it's going in there with OPAP, and OPAP are a very effective business. These guys, booked in 600 million in profits last year. I don't think that if it needs cash, it can easily go to Greek banks and leverage on that. I don't think that if it needs that kind of instant liquidity or instant funding, I don't think that there's going to be a lot of stopgaps there in Greece. So I think that it has a lot of plays to go to market in a real kind of platform to kind of expand or where it chooses to go from here onwards.
Okay, definitely a lot to consider around this Allwyn deal, but right now we're going to do a very quick commercial break and we will continue analyzing this whole merger thing between Allwyn and OPAP. We'll be right back.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
And we're back with more iGaming Daily. Allwyn has just announced a merger with OPAP, and once completed, Allwyn is assured a place among the top 5 global gambling PLCs. Should other operators be concerned with this merger between Allwyn and OPAP?
Okay. Yes, put simply. There's a new 16 to 18 billion pound player in the global gaming top 10. I'm not sure about its valuation being the second. I think that might just be something on the press release. But okay, there's no crime there. Yes, I mean, and look again. I go back to I think this kind of close to the decade is going to see a changing of the top guard, and that's okay. That's led by Flutter. But I think that we're going to see kind of much more dynamic companies come into that top 10. So Allwyn will be one of them. We've already seen new FDJ United break the top 10 as well. And it's a changing composition. I think the ones that are really now in trouble are the US land-based groups, especially now with that kind of exposure to what's going down in the downturn in US tourism, bad figures for the for Las Vegas, so that's going to definitely come into play. And I also think that it's reflective of a changing sentiment by investors in what they want to see in gambling companies. I think that they want to see as much kind of diversification in products, as well as in markets, and also brands that can successfully go out and get a next generation of customers. Allwyn definitely kind of fits in that top 5.
Yeah, just sorry to build on what Ted said. I mean, Ted mentioned earlier, I think in the first question you had for us, Fernando, that this is obviously a statement of intent from Allwyn, that they're now establishing themselves among some of the real big boys in the international gambling sector. Obviously, for a lot of the other firms, your Flutters, your Entains, or like Ted said, the US sort of land-based casino thing, then this should be a sign that there is another big competitor on the scene, one with a lot of resources behind it, a lot of capital, and some intentions to diversify its portfolio as much as possible. The other thing I would say, though, maybe that might take the pressure off some other firms a little bit, though, is obviously that, like we said earlier, Allwyn's focus is on being a lottery-led company. So a lot of your other firms like Flutter and so on that have sports betting and iGaming being more at the forefront, they're not going to clash as much as another firm would, if you see what I mean. Since Allwyn's focus is, a lot of it is on state lottery contracts and things like that, which for Flutter are not their, and of firms similar to them, is not their bread and butter, really. It might be something they have a look at, like they did in Italy, in Flutter's case, but it's not their top primary product. So, as much as Allwyn and their statement of intent here, this is another big addition to the top players in gambling. The competition might not always be as direct as we might think.
Yeah, definitely. So what I take from this is it's not necessarily going to challenge Flutter, but it's actually just going to get up there and kind of share a space with them, even if it doesn't get to the point or to the valuation, the market leading valuation from Flutter, is kind of going to be there, but not necessarily competing, right?
Okay, it's hard because look, Flutter is such a good front runner, and its valuation shows that 45 to 50 million. It's way ahead of anyone. And if you're asking, are Allwyn going to be the next big boys? I think they might have a chance just because I think that they are structured very differently to the rest of the opposition. So they and part of that is these lottery contracts, and also the lottery contracts coming into play at a time where we're going to see kind of much more kind of headwinds come out for kind of the online gaming space in terms of cost control, but also taxes in Western markets. The other thing is that a lottery contract is gives you a huge kind of privileged position. So one thing, if Allwyn can build on its lottery profile, it definitely kind of, adds an X factor to its valuation. You could kind of see it catching up against other competitors, but again, it goes back. Flutter is ahead of he's a heck of a front runner to catch up to.
And speaking of lottery, we are seeing another lottery-led merger. We have been discussing this in previous episodes, that the lottery segment, of course, is considered gambling's most conservative segment, but does this merger and acquisition mean it has become actually its most dynamic vertical, actually?
That's a very good question. I think Allwyn are certainly doing things very differently in lottery to what previous companies have done. Like you say, it's often a sector that's very static. It doesn't move much. You have these contracts that are like, some of the shortest ones you see are like 7 or 8 years, which is still a pretty hefty amount of time. And then the UK National Lottery license is 10 years. Some companies have countries have 20-year contracts with their lottery providers. So it's a sector that doesn't often move much. Allwyn are being very interesting in that how they're, again, I know I've said the word lottery led so much here, I'm sounding like a broken record, but with that focus on using the lottery contracts as their sort of base primary product, it uses them for a lot of stability and a consistent source of revenue, long-term revenue. and then are really experimenting with some other things. I think the Prize Picks acquisition is really interesting. That move in the US there by acquiring a company that, again, it's not a betting company, it's daily fantasy sports. So it's their focus is on being this lottery-led entertainment firm, not just a gaming firm, but one that is involved in other aspects of like sports and gaming adjacent entertainment. Yeah, I think they've really introduced an element of a more dynamic element, as you said, to this space that's traditionally a very conservative and static, largely because of all the state and government run contracts involved.
I agree with a lot of what Ted said, and in terms of is lottery now kind of the most dynamic field, I don't think so in terms of product, but I think in terms of competition, it is. We've seen, especially in the past 2 years, we've seen kind of the makeup of, especially in the B2B end of lottery technology suppliers has completely shaken up in terms of, your IGTs, the transformation of scientific games, also recently Intralot acquiring GameSys. So there's a lot of stuff kind of heating up there. Again, I think that the big pitch here is how much kind of fluidity is there going to be in those lottery contracts? How many of them are going to be up for grabs, right? And maybe, again, looking at kind of how this decade closes out, we might see a complete kind of reconfiguration of the lottery business. And if Allwyn's on top of that, that's another huge platform. And that might actually give them the kind of basis to be the highest valued gaming company in global gambling. I'm going back to the fact that I think the options are very bright. This is a sharp company. It deserves its place in gambling's top table.
And we're running a bit long with the time here, but I just wanted to ask, we've seen Allwyn take over Prize Picks. We've now seen Allwyn take over a bigger portion of OPAP. Can we expect Allwyn to continue on this merger spree, or do we expect them to go like a bit quieter in its new elevated status?
I think we should continue to expect some moves from them, over the coming years. I mean, maybe not something on the same scale as some of these, but they're certainly going to carry on looking at diversifying their options, and looking at new opportunities, 100%.
Yeah, I agree with Ted, and I think their next targets are either going to be something in Asia or something in Latin America, but it's a company that the other thing is because they got that kind of investor backing now. So again, I expect big moves.
All right. So if you want to keep up to date with what Allwyn is doing, make sure you subscribe to all SBC Media newsletters, primarily SBC News, whose editor is, of course, Ted OC, who you just heard on this episode. Thank you very much, Ted OC. Thank you very much, Ted. Thank you, Anaya McDonald, for producing this episode. I'm Fernando Noodt, and to our listeners out there, we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily Podcast, supported by OptiMove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News network, or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.